Here we are, another month, another new Flash. How's it going, man? What's new?
Pretty good, man.
Yeah,
A whole lot. It's
yeah,
just kind of the same old stuff,
yeah.
day in, day out.
Yeah, some pretty good comics this week. Get a pretty
Yeah,
solid
I
pull.
mean, yeah, it was smaller than most weeks, I think, recently, but all good stuff. So
Yeah. So how do you feel about this issue?
there are some things that I like, but I'm kind of getting over the answer one question, leave me with a bunch more at the end
Yeah. No,
because
I
it's
agree.
I'm I'm fine with the mystery, but like how much longer is this like kind of sustainable in terms of like the story going to be moving along? How many times are we going to leave like another like breadcrumb trail for us to follow? And then I don't know. It's not bad. It's just different, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I look at it as I always look at like the arcs as like how is this read in a trade? We only got one more issue,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, but I think that's like also half the problem. Like if you're gonna try and do like long form, like
yeah,
especially if you're gonna compare it to like a Mortal Hulk, like they have been, like that book wasn't written for arcs. It was written just because that's how it was written.
right. Yeah,
So
it's more of like you have to read the whole thing to understand it. It's
yeah,
not just like,
and
read this arc and then jump off and hop back on. I know, I get that.
right, and I'm hoping this is kind of it looks like this is what that'll be, but also it's kind of the same game of we have to keep it confined for a trade so that way we can sell that too. But I don't
So you said you texted me last night and you said you had a ton of questions. What were the questions?
know. I would say first off is the Jai. Like this is like the first time that we've seen anything like this in terms of like what the Speed Force, I guess, does to a speedster or a conduit, right?
Yeah, like are you talking about like the teleporting thing?
Yeah, and like these little meat babies. I don't even know what you would call them.
Yeah, it's weird because I feel like the way Spurrier handled it was this is like he treated it, oh excuse me, he treated it as like a thing that we've seen before and it's normal. When
Yeah,
it's a fresh new thing, and it was kind of strange the way he handled that.
yeah. It's like
Um,
the way he worded these things is very like it's one. It's a very like technical like science jargon, but also it's like you said, it's like we're supposed to feel like we've seen this before, or like this
yeah,
isn't new to us. But and I think the other thing too is like he this is like the first indication that Jai's felt this way, right? In terms of
yeah, yeah. I mean,
like his relationship with
oh,
good, sorry.
sorry. No, what were you saying?
I was like in terms of like his relationship with Wally at least, like and maybe it's because they're shooting from the angle of they're getting older and the powers are changing, and so it's like he's feeling it the most. I don't know, but it's weird to see like all of a sudden there's these problems that have arisen, for
Yeah,
everybody, I guess.
yeah, and like, I mean, I thought it was weird because I don't really like the way it was handled. How like Jai doesn't want to be a hero anymore, and it's like
Yeah,
based on everything that's. And I know you can't really say like, oh well, based on the last run because this is a different writer, different team, but like
right.
it's like I mean, I guess if you look back like the Jeff Johns stuff, like especially I
Hmm.
think of like Rebirth '09, when like,
Yeah.
Jai was like just playing video games, didn't care about being a superhero.
Hmm.
And you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Maybe pulling something from there, but like it just felt kind of out of place. It kind of just felt like a step backwards. It's like I
Yeah.
don't understand, and maybe like Spurrier has a plan with this, but like I don't understand why like there's so much craziness going on with Wally, and then everything with like his family and his friends is like just kind of like a mess also.
Right.
I mean, and like, we talked about like how like every issue it's like there's more questions, and like I just don't see
Mhm.
like one, I don't see it being resolved in like another issue. Um,
Mhm.
but I also don't like it's gonna take so long because like there's so much stuff with Linda that was set up. I mean, I'm glad at least like
Yeah,
something's been done with Jai because like we're in issue 5, and
right.
the stuff
We
with
saw
him,
him in the
first
first
issue.
issue. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's like okay, at least like that's being kind of addressed now. Because like you remember that first issue, it was kind of like weird, and it was
yeah.
just kind of like what's happening. Like, um, and what do you think about like Jai in relation to this what was the name? Inspector Pilgrim? Is that what it was
Pilgrim.
name?
And this is like gonna be a shot in the dark, but I have a feeling this Inspector Pilgrim guy is Jai from the future.
Yeah, possibly.
I don't know. It's just like a I feel like it's him. You know what I mean? Like
I
just
just
based
think
on how he interacts with him,
yeah,
isn't
he keeps
like
saying like he knows, he can't say how. It kind of was like a little cheap in
yeah,
that way because it's like if that is Jai, it's kind of like oh, but like I don't know.
right.
I remember like a couple issues back, we were thinking that this character, not that we know the name Inspector Pilgrim, we thought this was
Mhm.
the Folded Man.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it hit me this issue where it was like, oh, that wasn't the Folded Man. Um,
right.
I mean, I should have known just by like the weird kind of hat thing he's got, but
And I feel like, and here's like another question. Like the more that I think about this issue and like future selves and all this, like it's it's almost hard to like for characters like him to have like a reliable history. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Especially when it comes to the Speed Force, like if and it's facing all these issues and problems right now. Like I don't know, there's just a lot of like really smaller moving parts that I think he's trying to get going. But
yeah,
like again, it's like if this character is anything else other than just Inspector Pilgrim, how many issues are we going to get into this before we finally resolve that, or we have like the next step on what his deal is, or like he's still
right,
setting up stuff with Grodd, and that's like right after that, like he's still doing things with that, and we don't really have a clear answer on what
yeah,
Grodd's purpose is and all these things, other than like I will say I did like that Jai was kind of the one to like propose the question, like why do you do what you do, you know?
mm,
Because he's like ready to beat the Flash's ass, right
yeah.
in this, and Jai like just asks him a question. Not, he stops like I've never been asked that, so it's
It kind of
cool to see him. Good,
it kind of like took me out of the issue, that scene because it just kind of was weird because like Jai was there, and then
hmm
something was going on, and then it kind of just like felt like it just kind of stopped like what was happening. Like he kind of just like interrupted it, which he did, but like I had to
right.
kind of go back and like read it again because I was like, what's happening? Like it's still like I'm just like
Yeah, it
this run is just kind of reminding me of like Grant Morrison Green Lantern in the sense where I need to like read
yeah.
the issue again
I
after
was
I
gonna say
complete it.
like, and this is not like a dig
No,
towards
no,
Spurrier or anything, but like it seems like he's trying really hard to do like the Morrison and Alan Moore like style of like weirdness and storytelling, and it's not quite there. So I think a few things are kind of like will probably be a mystery for too long, and we might sit on them for too long. But it's not like it's not bad. It's just a lot to take in, and it's a lot to like keep track of.
yeah. I mean, I can appreciate like a layered comic. Like
Yeah,
I want a series where I feel like I need to read it twice, because like there's just a lot to unpack, and like I fully believe, you know, maybe, a year or so from now, if Spurrier's still writing the Flash, there's going to be a potential like good run out of this because there's a lot of moving pieces. I just hope
Yeah,
it's not one of those things where like it ends at like issue 12. Like I keep seeing
yeah,
like people say like let Spurrier cook. I believe like he's got
yeah.
something going. I think he's got a story here that like is going to be appreciated. I just think
Like,
it's a thing like people aren't going to like really praise right
right.
now. Because I don't think people have the patience for a flash run like this. Um, they're not
Yeah,
like us where
exactly.
we're not going to drop this book. We're going to keep reading it.
Right.
Maybe
Like,
we're a little insane for doing that, but like you get what I'm
yeah.
saying? Like I feel like I feel like down the
uh,
line, like we're gonna revisit this and be like, oh, remember like there was all this uncertainty and there was like kind of like a little bit of fatigue just from like all the different plot threads. Who
yeah, and
knows?
I, I almost look forward to that part because then it's kind of like we got the payoff
Mm,
for a lot of this stuff. But like I'll use Nightwing as the example. Like, I don't think that Nightwing inherently is a badly written book or it's uninteresting. It's just like, and this is like for me, we were 30 issues and like still plot threads that were happening from the first issue had not been resolved, by 100. And
yeah,
I, I think part of the fatigue for me there was the fact that we were still sitting on a lot of these plot threads from a couple of years ago that really got no resolution. Like, I understand that, like, like we can just use Hickman as the example for like long term and then some long term payoff. Um, that's done in a way that I don't necessarily forget about the things that he sets up because everything else is interesting. It's when everything else is not interesting and you leave those plot threads that are unanswered is kind of when I feel like people tend to fall off.
right. Yeah.
So
I
I
could
just don't
totally
want that
see
to
that.
happen with this. I don't want that to happen with this because it would be really easy for people to kind of ignore this book if it just becomes too much of like a commitment in terms of remembering what this character is going to be doing, remembering why this character is feeling this way, remember why this character is feeling a different way about their dad, like it's and
Yeah.
still having to sell people on the Flash and what he and who he is and his powers are.
Yeah. And like this run is just trying to reinvent the Flash as a character and like how his powers work.
Yeah,
And like I can appreciate that for like I was having this conversation with my brother last night actually. The like the public perception of like the Flash as a character is just stuck in like the idea of like speed, got to get faster, and like
yeah,
they can't get past like Flashpoint as a story. So like I can really appreciate how like Spurrier is just trying to like do something completely different. Do you get what I'm saying? Because
yeah,
of the TV show, because of the movie,
right.
people only just think of like, oh, he's got to get faster. Oh, he's got to go change the past. Like it's like no, like let's do like just a mind bending kind of big sci-fi horror kind of story. Um,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure sooner or later Spurrier will do some time travel stuff, but we're not getting it right now. So, but
Right. I
um,
uh I will say, like, despite all of the things that I think are weird about this issue or like that I'm still like, what the hell, where are we going with this? I do like the Jai focus because we got a lot of emphasis on Irie like in the previous run, like
yeah,
when Adams was on the book. So I do think like development for him was needed. I It's just like we're gonna have to wait and see because I just like with these new abilities and like what was he called? A shaper? Is that what the stillness called him?
yeah. Well, like, I think he said something about conduit, and then he said shaper. Yeah, there's a lot of like weird like terms being thrown around still.
Yeah, like I'm all for like changing like or updating some of these things to make them like fresh and new and kind of give Jai some individuality, I guess, amongst the rest of the Flash family. But it it almost feels like he took what happened to him in Heroes in Crisis with like him exploding and losing control in a more like focused, you know,
Yeah,
thing here at the end with him blowing up the stillness. And that's another thing too, is like we still don't know what those things are. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like we know a little bit based off our one issue two with
yeah,
their interaction with Wally, and then so clearly there's going to be another thread that he's going to have to pick up on. So it's it's just playing the long game, I think, mostly.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Mm.
do um, I don't know if you picked up on it, but like it did kind of tie back into Adam's run, which I can appreciate like a continuation. I hate when like
Mm.
writers just don't reference what came before,
Yeah,
which I
and just
thought Spurrier was
ignore
going
it.
to do. But you know, did mention like Gold Beetle, did mention like Time
Yeah.
Point, which I liked. Um,
Oh, with Bart.
with Bart, yeah, which that's a whole other thing. I
Um,
like kind of, if I'm
yeah,
being honest with you, I kind of forgot about that whole storyline with like
yeah, with
Max and
Max.
Bart.
Yeah, which thankfully in the next two issues, I think we're gonna have Jai looking for Max, or like kind of like trying to feel him out, which is I'm
Yeah,
excited to see because it'll probably get some development on his powers and like what they are because like for right now he's just the only thing I compare it to is like like in Marvel right now, Doctor Strange has these like dolls that he can like communicate through.
okay,
But it doesn't really work this way specifically because he can teleport from each like I don't even know what to call them. Like me, I'm just gonna call them me babies. I don't even know what to call them.
me,
Like I don't know what to call them. Like they're just like little me babies. But yeah, like he jumps from like one like I guess jump point to the next if he can. Like if he focuses on the right speedster or like their frequency. I don't know.
yeah,
A lot of the powers in this are explained with a bunch of words that most people don't understand. I think
yeah,
you know.
yeah. I
But
mean, this definitely won't be for everybody. Definitely, and like I've said before, it's definitely not like if you're gonna get into the Flash, like, and you've never read any of the comics, this is not where I would jump
yeah,
on. Um,
right.
I love this cover though. I don't know. I mean, what do you think of the cover?
Yeah, I think this is well, it's definitely my favorite of all of the Deodato covers, I think. Because
Yeah, I
his
like
art
them.
isn't off. Like it's not I like his art for what it is in this series. I think it's fine. But I also know that
Yeah,
he's leaving the title, like he's not gonna be on it in the next issue or so.
is it the next issue? Oh, he's on. So he finishes
The
out the
next one.
arc.
But yeah, so Seven will be the new artist, right?
Yeah, it's weird how like this cover is for seven, but this is like what it got. Like when there was the announcement, that was the cover.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know if you saw this. I told JD about it, and then he went and posted about it. He was like, "Oh, thanks for
Oh,
the
the
post." Yeah. Um, Hunter, I guess, is back. At least that's like
yeah, well,
what.
because he came back in 800.
Yeah, we were chatting about that too. How like Hunter's back was back in 800, but we haven't seen him yet. So I'm kind of wondering. Um,
Yeah.
I mean,
See,
that's like
like,
to throw this out, but
and that's something that like I think like if he really is gonna commit to like the long form and him doing like maybe 10 to 20 plus issue like payoff in terms of certain plot threads is if we get arcs that are like the return of Zoom, or stuff that like people like and that people will be like interested in. Yeah, I think it will help the book with keeping longer legs. You know what I mean? Like
oh,
people will
absolutely.
probably people will probably they'll feel like it's less of a drag to get through. They'll feel like it's less of a like mental commitment in terms of remembering what everything like has to like where everybody's at and what they're doing. If you have like good, I don't want to say filler stuff, but like when you have like everything that like fills in those gaps is good, it's probably going to be an easier time to carry a lot of those things
Oh, definitely.
longer.
I just hope
So he
it's not
just
one of
has,
those things where like editorial was just like, hey, you got to put Hunter in
yeah,
this book. I hope it wasn't like a forced
yeah,
thing. I hope it's like organic kind of like there's a plan to it because we see runs that are kind of get a little interrupted because editorial gets in the way, makes decisions. Um,
right,
so yeah, I'm hoping that it works, and I really just hate for it to be like this complicated story, and then Hunter's just there, and then Hunter being there
yeah,
makes it more complicated. Um,
right. Because like I'm trying to think, the last time that we saw him was Williamson's, right? At the end of Williamson's or
yeah,
close to,
yeah.
and he had like, see, like he like had sacrificed himself, right?
Well, he found out that Eobard had orchestrated,
Yeah, that's right.
was the puppet
Like
master of his life and made him a villain, and
yeah, so like he kind of came in at the last second to right that wrong. Which,
yeah.
how did you feel about that send off for Zoom back then?
Um, well, if you look at like Hunter as like a character, he
Mm,
kind of like as much as he was a villain, like it was all like to the for the purpose of like making Wally a better hero.
right,
So Hunter, he's like a character where yes, he's a villain, but like he comes at it at like a very different angle. So
right.
I some people didn't like the whole retcon making it so Eobard had pulled the strings on his life,
Mm,
but I kind of liked it. I thought it was cool. I think it made
yeah,
sense. It
like
doesn't take
I'm
away from the original story. Um,
right,
and
right.
Blitz is like, well, I mean, I love the Jeff Johns run. Um,
Yeah,
I'm always back and forth which run I like more, Jeff's or Mark's, which is kind of might be a hot take, but yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how like it'll be because like back then, like Zoom was like wearing like a red suit, and he kind of
yeah.
had
He was
like a
wearing the Silver Age Flash suit thing.
yeah, and like he had like a heroic kind of end to him, which I was kind of content. I was like, I kind of like where
Yeah,
that finished his character, so I'm kind of wondering like what's it gonna be like now?
yeah. Like I mean,
I'm kind
obviously
of
we have like
worried.
we know his like a bit of his motivation because like Ashley is around, but we don't know what
True.
she's doing. Like he's looking for her clearly, just based on the 800 story. But
Yeah.
like what? And then that's another thing. What connection does she have to the bigger story in Flash? Like, is she going to show up? And it's going to be like because she's in the book, he'll kind of segue in, and it'll become a bigger problem later. Like,
Yeah.
it,
I'm
it's
kind
just
of
going to be
it's weird because like those characters in terms of for me, the story has kind of been told. So I'm kind of like
yeah.
I
Like,
don't
and
I
that's
don't
kind of where I'm at with it too.
yeah, I don't really like when they revisit stuff because like
Because
I'm like good when they like have like a definitive end for a character and it's like, oh awesome. I don't need to
mhm,
keep reading. Like I not that I don't have to keep reading, but like the, it's done. So
yeah, like we don't have to keep dipping back into that.
yeah, like I mean I like the status quo for what it is right now. I like how it's I like how right now like Mr. Terrific's a big part of this
Mhm.
run. He was a big part of the last run too. Like it's
Yeah.
cool. It's stuff like that you can like look back on like remember when like in Jeff's run when like Cyborg was in that book? Like that was cool. That was different,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't like retreads kind of.
Yeah. And like, I just, like if we just stay from the angle like with Ashley, like I think the only thing that would be different is she doesn't know that Eobard kind of had a hand in everything, right? So with that, I mean, there's not a lot to work with, like other than like having to bring them back and reopen that, like, well, my dad is dead and blah 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 blah. Like we're gonna have to deal with like basically almost playing catch up with like where they've been, what they've been doing, why they're and I don't think we need to do that. I think if they're going to use him, it needs to be from a fresh angle and not like you said, like retreading that. I
Oh, I
just don't
mean,
know what
also
that'll be.
like there's a lot of people that are probably reading this that like didn't read the Jeff run that probably jumped on it like
Mm,
Rebirth, and they're like probably like what,
yeah,
you know? Um,
yeah,
I mean, I could be wrong. You never know. I mean, I can't really assume that everyone's read as much as I have in terms of this character,
yeah.
which
I mean,
that's
right,
like,
and and I feel like Flash is one of those characters. It's pretty easy to assume that most people probably haven't.
yeah,
Then they've probably read New 52, or they've read like some of Rebirth. Probably when the show was popular and when it was like if it
yeah,
did draw in any new readers, and if they've stayed around this long, they now not only had to deal with the change in from Barry to Wally, they now have to deal with like I don't know, probably most of the characters they thought from the show were Barry characters are now not for them. Like I'm sure it's like a big shift for them to have to like learn all of this mythos along with having to kind of unlearn what they got from the show, I guess.
yeah,
So I don't know how many people are like who have been reading Flash or I guess comics have now jumped on the Flash or like how many of them are like long-term fans and they've been reading and they understand like I don't know the for me at least like what I see a lot of is most people are just kind of feeling it out because it just got recommended because it's just been seen everywhere.
yeah,
You know, they keep saying, "Oh, it's like Immortal Hulk. Oh, it's like Saga of the Swamp Thing. Oh, it's like this," and then so they get on it and they try it, and then or it's like us, and we've just been with reading the book for so long, and we kind of just we just keep reading.
yeah. I mean, that's like kind of just the thing with like the show. It's like it's the comics and like I said, the public like perception of the character is so different
Yeah,
that I don't know. I just feel like I couldn't imagine just hopping in and reading like this. I feel
right,
like I'd be confused if I just had like the public knowledge of it. I'd be like, what, you know?
right.
But
Like,
it's just
cause
me.
and here's the other thing I thought about too is like we're coming off the back of like the Flash movie from last year, and I'm sure that is a significant portion of people that like enjoyed that movie, you know. So I'm sure when they started picking up the Flash after seeing that movie, like that was in the transition period right between the end of Adams and the beginning of Spurrier, right?
Mm.
So like I imagine coming from like the angle of the movie and you thought the movie was pretty good and you started to read Flash, like it's still wildly different
Mm.
than what one would expect, because again, the greater perception of the Flash and what his powers are and who he is just go fast and travel but through time. That's kind of like what everybody thinks that he is. So, I mean, it goes without saying, Spurrier has his work cut out for him if he's trying to make this like an all-time grade and trying to get like the wider appeal because he's going to have to work double time and kind of again make people unlearn this idea of what the Flash is.
I think that's like the whole I think that's his goal with what he's doing. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know. Have you ever listened to any interviews about him talking about the Flash?
he did what was the channel? Comic Pop. I think he did an interview with them, and he talked like a little bit about the Flash and just how like he like it's almost like you inherit this thing. It's not necessarily just like you come in and you do it and that's it. Like I guess he was like kind of like given the heads up when he started. Like you kind of inherit the fan base. You inherit all of like the stuff that other writers have done. Like it's just something that it pretty like everything pretty much coincides pretty well with everything else.
Yeah.
So he that was like one thing he was saying that he had to deal with was like having to, and Adam said the same thing to him, I guess, like, hey man, like, good luck, you got, there's a lot of great fans and great readers for this series, but like you have to basically respect everything else. So you have to kind of toe the line,
Yeah.
which he's not wrong. Like to be able to like not do away with everything that came before, but respect that and then also try and do something new. I'm sure it's probably not easy.
Oh yeah. And I mean, like, there's a lot of like people online that just kind of like will trash like other writers and books just because they're not respecting the past. And
Yeah,
I mean, this book has done a pretty good job so far of just kind of respecting what's come before, and
right.
also, but at the same time, not just telling the same story and just trying to like do its own thing. Um,
Yeah, like I'm all for new and like mix ups and like changes to things as long as it's not like, I mean, I guess the Speed Force is different in the way that you can kind of almost make these unfounded changes and it doesn't really mean a whole lot as long as the way it affects the characters is in line with what we know about them. Like I think that's the bigger part of the problem is like long-term fans are so worried about all of these characters being like characterized not the right way that we almost are just like, don't, let's leave the new stuff there because we don't know how it's going to affect everybody.
yeah,
So we just want it, but at least that's how I feel. Like sometimes I'm stuck in that place of like, give me more of what Adams is doing because that like feels safe and it's good and we like that. But like also, I think it is time for a change to give us something new and kind of get more eyes on Flash. So if this is the way we do it, I just kind of have to take it in stride, I guess.
yeah. I just always just feel like it's kind of weird because I thought they took Adams off the book just because they weren't editorial wasn't fans of like how much like the family stuff was progressing when like
Mhm.
Barry hasn't had his kids, hasn't had a family. So I
Yeah,
just kind of am like, I thought they were going to get away from that. So I still wonder, like, why did they take Adams off the book? You
yeah, like
know?
and I think we probably both like felt this way at some point. Like that book when Adam was on it had the makings to be like the DC Fantastic Four book, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of
So like
comparisons to that.
the fact that that was never capitalized on, I think was probably like, I think was definitely like an editorial thing because you have a writer like Adams who like you already have him writing things for you in other mediums and he's like tried and true and people like him and people like the book was selling like I almost think at like an all-time high, like I everybody was talking about Flash then.
Yeah,
And I mean the only negative thing that people said about it was that it was too family oriented, but like that's like saying the Fantastic Four is too family oriented,
yeah. Well, like, I
because like
mean,
that's what half the character is his family. So
he was also just giving the
it's
fans what they wanted. They wanted to see like
yeah,
all the flashes, which are like, you know, which is I'm glad they did because I mean that's what was set up with the end of Williamson's run. Is like the family's all here, they're back together, and
right.
then we had that little short stint where it was what was his name, Kevin Shinnick, and I was like, oh man, where's this going?
Mhm.
And then they
Yeah.
bring Adams in, and it was like, oh, awesome.
And like it's so funny because like that Kevin Shinnick, like it's like what 6 or 7 issues, right? Like between the end of Williamson and Adams. Like I almost like the only thing it did really was make it so that Barry and Iris were going to get engaged. It kind of set that up, you know, like with
Yeah,
the ring and with everything else. And then we'd had to wait how long for that payoff? Like
yeah,
1 Minute War,
yeah, a
and even
while.
still, like which again, like it almost feels like it feels like that they're not going to make the commitment to further him. Like if they took Adams off the book for a reason, and one of those reasons was
Yeah,
they felt like Wally was progressing too fast in terms of like his family growing and Barry isn't. They had how long to commit to that. You know what I mean? Like they've had since 2011
Yeah.
up until 2000, like literally now, to make that work. And another reason why I feel like that Barry is kind of like falling to the wayside because he's stuck and they don't. And maybe Spurrier will be the one to do something with him and with Iris, but like he's just running in place, man. Like he's on a treadmill, but he's not really running anywhere. So
And that's a good way to look at it. But
it's weird, man. Like I want to see Barry like do something new and do something like exciting for a change, but he's just like the mopiest guy around. So
I mean, I've always just kind of said that they never should have brought him back. I think he was just better. And I
mhm.
think he meant more to me as a character
Yeah,
when he wasn't around. And it was kind of
I
like,
mean that's 100% a hill I'll die on. Is like his legacy was more meaningful when he was dead.
yeah, like he just kind of like had more of a presence in the book, I think. Like he doesn't
Yeah,
like he I don't know. It's just strange. I just feel like it's retreading. And I get like
yeah,
if you
like
really go back and like you think about the time and like who was writing, like Jeff Johns is like a Silver Age, fanatic. So it's like makes sense that
mhm.
they would want to like have Barry in it again. But
Yeah,
I just feel like the character just never has really recovered from that. I mean, it has,
right.
but like,
I like and here's how I see it too is like when you look at the times that he showed up, like from like the beginning of Wade's run till when he comes back in like Rebirth, you know, uh, all of the moments he like shows up are like meaningful to Wally, and they're like to help him on the hero's journey and to like give him like that extra boost of like hope and confidence and like somebody's in his corner, when like all of the chips are down, I guess. So to go from this idea that like the 90s and early 2000s were all of these like Barry meant all of these thanks to all of these people and he was like the pinnacle of hope in the DC universe, and to get him back and since 2009 to only basically the majority of his moments be I'm sad, you know I can't do it, ugh. It's just like how are you going to sit there and propose this idea of what he is and then never do it on the page until you like absolutely need him to do it to save the day? Like I don't think that's necessarily like that's not character development. That's just kind of ass pulling it out at the end to make sure that he wins.
yeah,
So again, I don't want to like rip on anybody that's written Barry, but it's like if he really is supposed to be this, hopeful guy, we don't ever see it.
yeah.
So that needs to change. Like that really needs to be the biggest change to Barry.
We'll see what happens, man. We'll see. Hopefully something next issue. But well, I gotta wrap this up. I actually had to go to work, so it was
All
great
right,
talking to
all
you
right.
again, man. About
Yeah, for
I
sure,
always
man.
look
Thanks for
forward to
having me.
this. And
We'll
I will
get
see
JD
you.
on one of these days.
I'm trying to get him on, man. We'll see. But always good talking with you, man, and look forward to the next one.
For sure, man. Catch you later.